All right, welcome back. Joining me right now is Tope Fasua, who is the Chief Executive Officer at Global Analytics, is joining me via Skype. Hello, Mr. Fasua. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Mr. Fasua, can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Connection
is bad.
Let me start by asking,
Yes.
what is the cost of a Nigerian life at this point?
Or the value of a Nigerian life is well, unfortunately, it's depreciating right now. I've always said that it seems as if, in fact, the more we devalue the naira, the more we devalue the Nigerian life. But in recent times, with what is going on right now, it's even much cheaper. Given all the violence that's going on at this point in time, given the unfortunate incidences of the recent past, if you like, the engagement of the security services with some of the youths that are having a peaceful demonstration, even though the details of that is yet to come out. But in general, it's not looking too good. We need to really pull ourselves back very, 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 very quickly before this dovetails and snowballs into something nobody actually wants to happen. So it's not looking too good.
Your analogy of that, like as the day go by that the naira depreciates, the value of the Nigerian life also depreciates. Do you think that government values the lives of Nigerians at this time, especially with what we've been seeing over the past few years, not even justice administration? I'm even going beyond what happened in Lagos State and in some parts of the country in the last few days. We've seen the state of insecurity heightened across the country, and it seems that it's still same old. Government will just come, say one or two things, release statements, but we do not really see that call for action. It seems just words and no action.
Right. Though I think we need to be a bit fair, though. I must tell you, you know what? I always say this every time. Leadership is a thankless job, is a thankless affair. A couple of days back, I shared, it just occurred to me to share on my Facebook page that this country should be a country where we beg people to lead. We beg them to stay. Like in Japan, up until Shinzo Abe, most of their prime ministers of the past decade or more, they will be there for 1 year, maybe 200 days, and then they just leave. Shinzo Abe also quit recently. He said, listen, I need to take care of my health. So Nigeria has a lot of issues with the social issues, the cultural, socio-cultural issues, and so on, the economic issues that people should not. Getting into Nigeria, it shouldn't be something that people strive so hard and spend so much money to do. It's what we should actually beg people to do. So leadership is difficult. You can see what someone like Jide Sanwo-Olu is going through in Lagos, having to really sweat, be on the ground, explain himself, and I think he has been, give or take, he has been a bit articulate. So I think that I would still weigh and say on the side of government, I think they mean well. Government means well. I don't believe that government wants to generally waste the lives of the youth or the lives of the average Nigerian citizen, really. I think we have to meet somewhere in the middle as well. If you ask me, I think we have to meet somewhere in the middle, and it's what I'd always advised in the past few days before this actually started snowballing into something totally different. Because some of those protests went on for a bit too long, other people layered their own agenda on it, and now we're seeing instances where people are taking it to the tribal front, or even some are talking about the president must go in a democracy, and for me that is not acceptable, because I personally engaged with this democratic system. We formed the party, I ran for president, and so I believe that we should give ourselves a chance to try again, and the youth to try their hands on this politics. So we should not alienate government, because hey, the leaders of today were followers yesterday, and the people who are agitating today may find themselves in leadership positions as well tomorrow. And then they will probably realize just how difficult governing a few people can be, not to talk of if you have maybe 200 million people to govern. However, it'll be very important. Of course, people have been telling the president to step out and actually give a talk. I think by now they should have, been able to carve out something very comprehensive and with carefully chosen words for the gentleman to read to the people. Perhaps that will calm some nerves.
Did you see this coming since, in my analysis, at least over the few years, if you take a look at Nigeria's demography, over 70% of us are young people between the ages of 0 to 35 years. So do you see this as an agitation, a pent-up anger against not just even this government, but against the inadequacies of Nigeria, the inadequacies of the system not working well? We have an army of unemployed youths. Unemployment is at 27%, as at the last count by the NBS. Poverty rate is increasing. COVID-19 hasn't helped. We're just trying to recover from a lockdown. So how would you, assess all of this with what is ongoing right now in the country?
Right, let me take it from the last one, COVID. All right, now COVID has resulted in the closure of a lot of businesses and an increased unemployment rate. The youth unemployment rate came to about 60% the last time that the Bureau for Statistics gave us from that, meaning that we have a lot of people just roaming around. But you see, we should also appreciate our economy and our society, because a lot of people have been able to survive on social capital. A lot of people have been, kind of forced to give away things, to give to families, to give to, different kind of levels that you probably would rely on government elsewhere. The government said they have also pushed out some palliatives, the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs, but many people are saying, listen, we didn't get any of those. However, I also know that the government is pushing out loans through some of their agencies and so on. But it takes a while for those things to come true. So yes, certainly part of the predictions of COVID was that post-COVID was going to be a very turbulent era where people will rise and agitate for different kind of things, So yes, but this is again not something that's just starting in recent times. This is a build-up to of the inefficiencies of government. Where I think we need to be careful is to say, listen, for example, I've heard a few people talk about regime change and all of that, but I'm saying we have gone through the era of military and all of that, military rule for decades. We struggle to come out of that. I believe that a democratic government has more opportunities for everybody. Because in the military, for example, there's not going to be any national assembly, no state assembly, so very representation around it. So we looting shop. This is not a Nigerian thing. When did that happen? And when did that cutover happen? And you see, the reason why, so basically that's it. When did that cutover happen? And of course, those two things are not linked together. Different phenomena, which I think we need to assess differently.
Okay, Mr. Fasua, the network, the connectivity is not that strong because your picture is freezing, so we couldn't hear some of the things you said. But I just hope that this network at least gets better. But you talked about, okay, let me ask you this question. Government's handling... Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Fasua? Okay, I think we should take a break, and when we come back,
I can hear you. I'm trying to see if I can take out the picture. Or your guy... Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you. I think your guy should take out my picture and put so that my voice can...
Okay, let's try that over the break and see if that will work better than it is right now. Let's quickly take a break, but while we'll take a break, please connect with us and engage with us on social media. Our handles will be put on the screen, and tell us your comments of what you think has been happening in the last few days and what solutions thereof. What is the way forward? We'll be right back. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. It's Moneyline with Nancy.
There is no other time than now that has been afforded us to reset the economy of Nigeria again.
It is in difficult time that nations take decisions to build their country.
Nancy, I think I would be remiss to say that, look, Nigerian economy is vulnerable.
So we have to come up with strategies as governments. How do we deal with this issue of hunger? How do we get food into people's hands?
Who is the subsidy favoring?
There is no subsidy, is zero. It's zero forever, Nancy.
Subsidy has never benefited the ordinary Nigerian. It has continued to benefit only the elite. The aspiration for us is to make Nigeria a net exporter of petroleum products.
You can join us on all our social media platforms. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram. Go to YouTube now and subscribe. Moneyline with Nancy TV. Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the board chair at Gavi. Good morning, Doctor. Good to see you. The Honorable Minister for State for Petroleum Resources, Timipre Silva. Welcome to the program. Mele Kiari, the Group Managing Director at the NNPC. Good morning.
Good morning, Nancy.
The DG, Federal Competition Consumer Protection Commission, Babatunde Yukere.
We have to pay a lot more attention to the health sector. We've taken it for granted for too long. The whole issues around medical tourism, we need to actually make Nigeria a tourist destination as far as health is concerned.
We're interested in sustainability as well as the continuity of our business. If we do not invest in educating our future talent pool, we'll be left with no talent to drive it there. So perhaps it's a long-term thing there for them to go there. But I think that unfortunately, that's one of the sectors that's going to suffer at this point in time. It's only a tiny percentage that can get the education, continue with the education right now.
How do we begin to develop homegrown real estate and technology solutions to enable us to deliver housing solutions and systems to solve the teeming and the very dramatic housing deficit that we have in Nigeria?
What you need is a policy handoff. And that policy handoff has to do two things. One, increase productivity and growth, the supply side. And two, make household economic security go up, make people more comfortable.
All right, welcome back. Tope Fasua is still with me, the Chief Executive Officer at Global Analytics. Mr. Fasua, I hope that the network is better now. Let's take a look at the different parts of the country that curfews have been imposed. We have Lagos State, Osun, Ondo, Edo, Plateau, Rivers, which Abia, Ebonyi. So you're seeing that even economic activities are down right now. We're just still trying to come back from the lockdowns. How would you assess the situation? I can see you nodding your head.
It's pathetic.
Okay.
It's pathetic. It's pathetic. It's unfortunate. I mean, listen, we never knew that 2020 was going to be a year that everything will grind to a halt. Well, whereas some people are positioning it as, okay, it's the time of our revolution, we should just bear the pain and all of that. Yeah, I think there's going to be some good sides to it, but it's really, really pathetic that Not only is business shut down again after so many months of COVID shutdown, lockdown, but also the destruction. I mean, you saw the number of those BRT buses that were burnt in Lagos yesterday. That's billions in Naira. I mean, those terminals that were burnt, the offices, NPA office, and so on, the street lights that were destroyed. I mean, it's also annoying. And I do not think that even when people will plan revolutions elsewhere, it's not when you begin to destroy your infrastructure. I think we need to think about that. That to say, if you really wanted a revolution or a better governance, is it to destroy the infrastructure that you have? What does the street lights being there or you destroying it have to do with having a revolution? The buses that are being used to ferry people around, I thought we're talking about good governance. And I think we should stay on that good governance. Of course, that is the downside of the leaderless protest, if you like. That's the downside. Every strategy has its own downsides. We thought that they could have pulled off or, suspended tactically at a point in time when they had all the attention of government. They really did have attention of government at the point, and government was saying, come, let us talk. And it wasn't always going to be about, let us come and let us talk so that we can bribe you. No, there's got to be an element of trust in leadership if you really want to make progress. If you don't trust yourself as a human being, you believe that you will always compromise or be compromised, then you can't trust the next person. That means that you cannot actually grow leadership. The youth of the country must understand that by what they have done, the leadership of this country is now thrust upon their shoulders. And therefore, they must be inclusive in nature. They must learn trust. They must learn how to trust people, how to trust themselves, how to take chances, how to take risks. Because the critical differentiation between leadership and management actually lies in risk-taking and in visioning, those two things. They have to have a vision, and then you have to be able to take the risk. When the government was calling the youth to come and talk, what I thought they could have done is to take the opportunity to redesign Nigeria, to say in detail, this is what we want, even starting with the issue of policing. To say, look, I suggested to someone yesterday, look, you could say, okay, we want to ensure that you no longer use a name like SARS or SWAT, because those names portend negative things. The second one is something about special weapons and tactics. In some places, they call it special weapons anti-terrorist. That's what SWAT is. So we don't want that. We want the police to be something like police tactical service, something that shows that police is a service and not a force. And then you can now say, listen, these are the kind of uniform we want you to buy for them. This is the kind of cars you want you to buy for them. They have to wear body cam like it is in America. It is the youth that have the exposure. They are the ones that watch Netflix and all of these things and see how it is done in America and elsewhere, even though America is not a very good example for policing, even if it was in Europe, So I think I think they missed that chance. It's difficult to reconcile looting and destruction of properties and harassing with the very lofty ambition of the peaceful protesters and those who intend to. And I say again, even it doesn't even wash with the issue of revolution. If you really want a revolution, you build, you don't destroy. If you destroy yourself, then what are you going to lead over in the new era? That's the big issue. So it's pathetic, the amount of financial losses that people are suffering. A lot of those people that are being looted, whose shops are being looted in some plazas in Lagos and co. And not only Lagos, in even many parts of Nigeria, at present, especially in the south of this country, many of them are uninsured. So it's back to zero for many of them, except maybe government can assist them. The youth of this country must also understand, like I said before, that what you're going to get in Nigeria that you will not get abroad is actually social capital. When you're here, you still get some things to fall back on. When you're out there, you can fall flat on the ground, even though they have social security. But if you go in illegally, you can't even actually assess some of those things as well. So Nigeria is something we need to build, not to tear down, if you ask me. Yeah.
Now, taking from your last statement in terms of tearing down, would you blame the youths, the peaceful protesters we've seen at least in the last 11 or 12 days before the hoodlums took over for the losses we're seeing across the country, financial losses, human losses we're seeing across the country? Because the protesters were initially very peaceful. That in fact, when they finished protesting, they cleaned the areas that they have protested. And when they see people infiltrating, bad eggs infiltrating, they come against them and they caution them. So won't you make that distinction that at a time it went out of control, or the hoodlums should take responsibility for the destruction we're seeing across the country?
The problem is that you cannot blame a hoodlum. It's called a hoodlum for that purpose, because you can't blame him. You can't ascribe any responsibility to a hoodlum. Where the hoodlum belongs is in prison, correctional facilities, in the prison. The person you will blame are two people. You will blame the government for not acting quick enough. You probably blame the president for not addressing the people, even though he has never been one to address the people. I mean, that's a different issue entirely that I don't usually like to talk about. But you would also blame the peaceful youth, who are very enlightened people, to have understood strategy. You should have, that listen, there's a point at which you have to know how to gauge the system and understand that if you're not careful, other people are going to layer and actually take your protest to where you don't want your protest to go. Perhaps it's an example for them for the next time they'll be able to group themselves. They were able to group themselves, but look at what's going on now. I doubt if most of the people, the ladies and gentlemen who were on the streets last week and the week before, would actually subscribe to any of the things that's going on now. However, they also cannot exonerate themselves from some responsibility as to what is going on, because if you prepare the ground for chaos and other things happen, you're also partly responsible.
Mr. Fasua, what is the opportunity cost, according to economists, of actions and inactions? Because if I get a sense of what you're saying, you are also partly blaming the peaceful protesters for hoodlums' invasion. Would you blame them because they protested for 11 or 12 days? And where did hoodlums come from? I saw videos of hoodlums entering vehicles tinted. Supposedly, the hoodlums will not own those kind of cars. To where peaceful protesters are. What happened in Apo? They were not peaceful protesters. We all saw it. AIT took those visuals live. So would you blame the peaceful protesters for that?
No. Well, like I said before, the blame is shared. Of course, government has the bigger blame. Like what you said, the example you mentioned, seems apparent that that was a government vehicle that was used to convey hoodlums, who they probably paid to go and try and disrupt what the other guys were doing. Okay, which is totally unacceptable, because that is money financed with the taxpayers' money being used against the taxpayers. All right, but also there was a critical junction at which I felt that, and I advised, of course, part of what we saw from this other side of the youth was also they were quite aggressive, sometimes very abusive, also, lacking in trust, very distrustful, and then they felt, no, you're coming to hijack. No, I said, you're going to need, even if the country was actually released to the youth today, you will have to govern over everybody. And when you're governing over everybody, you don't talk down on some and say your generation have failed. No, come on, you don't need that. Nobody needs that. No generation. Listen, every generation has its own wars to fight, and people will try. But if we continue with this kind of abusive brickbats and so on, then of course, God help even the youth of today when their own children grow up and what they will be told. And of course, running a country or running a state is also pretty much very, very difficult and very multifaceted in terms of the challenges that you face. So yeah, of course, the government has the bigger of the part of the blame, but also the youth must continue. They could rue the peaceful protest that they were having. Who is the one taking guns right now, going to places and breaking those places open with guns and other ammunition and setting those places on fire? Who are those people really? Who are those people destroying? Who are those people destroying infrastructure around the country? That's what we should be asking now, and we need to get to the bottom of it, because again, this country doesn't need this kind of thing. I would rather a positive revolution that builds than a revolution that destroys, is my view.
If you take a look at counting the cost of this and perhaps the price of violence that we've seen in the last few days. You mentioned earlier the BRT terminals in Lagos burned down. The BRT owners have said that they've lost over 100 million naira in the last few days. Oriental Hotel Management came up to say that the perception that Bola Tinubu owns the hotel, it's not. And, you know, hoodlums went into the hotel, beat some of the staff and destroyed some things at the hotel. We've also seen malls, shops being looted. So it seems that the poor is inflicting war against the poor, as it were, because these are people that are even trying to eke a living, and yet hoodlums are going to, you know, destroy what we are just trying to build after the COVID-19 lockdown.
You know, the point was that at some point in time, Nigeria, oh, it's so painful. Nigeria got kudos from the rest of the world for staging a protest without looting. Because again, what we've seen elsewhere is, especially like even in America, once there's a protest like this, the next thing is you see people start to loot, stealing Air Jordan shoes and, you know, DVD players and all those inconsequential stuff. It seemed as if we had it wrapped up. So you then wonder where these other hoodlums, so-called, who are also many times young people, are coming from, looting ShopRite, you know, stealing Indomie and all of that kind of stuff. You know, so it's just totally very, very unfortunate. So I mean, it is what it is. The boss owners can talk about what they've lost in terms of income. You'll be shocked how these things rack up very quickly. If you look at every state that has declared 24 hours emergency, means that even the market woman that's selling corn and barley by the roadside has nothing to do now. And these are people who are just coming from a COVID lockdown, we're just thanking our stars that COVID did not kill us the way they said it will kill us. Okay, and us actually still keeping our eyes out in case something else comes up. So there may be a second wave or whatever it is. God help us. All right, but how much do we stretch our luck? Even a lot of the youths who were gathering were also defying COVID when they were gathering in that number as well. Okay, so but God help us that maybe we've been able to overcome COVID. Maybe we have some immunity that they hadn't countenanced, those guys from abroad hadn't countenanced, but we cannot take it for granted. Let me tell you the cost. Nigeria GDP is $400 billion, right? If Nigeria GDP is $400 billion as a result of COVID, all right, that means that each day our GDP is $1.095 billion. And if you multiply that at 380 official now, we're talking about 417 billion naira. Okay, if you say like if half of the country was shut down, that means that we're losing 208 billion naira on a daily basis, or I mean something close to that, give or take. Because of inactivity, if GDP is actually the measurement of goods and services provided, if the Uber guy cannot go out and do a good day's business and make 15,000 naira at the end of the day or 10,000 naira, all of that adds up right now as we speak, okay? That means the service has not been provided. That is the opportunity cost. So the opportunity cost is close to at least 200 billion every day that we're losing. And of course, when you look at what happened with Oriental, do you know, except they have a strategy, the business of Oriental will be impacted for a very, very long time because people will not have the confidence to sleep in that place overnight. It's so close to that toll gate. I don't know who owns the toll gate. Well, Tinubu said he doesn't own it, that it belongs to the state government. I want to believe that if he was as smart as they say he is, he would have divested and taken his cash out a long time ago. Why are we destroying toll gate and burning banks? What do the banks have to do with that? I even heard that even Chicken Republic, an organization that supplied food for even the peaceful protesters, was attacked and looted. So where do we start? Where do we go from here? That means that there were many ramifications to this issue that we're not looking at, or we did not see from beginning. And we need to all go back. Everybody has a responsibility to find a way of pressing reset and going back to normal. Everybody.
Where do you think that reset button should start from? The government, or what the government has done? Is it enough? Because people are saying that they need President Buhari to come out to speak. The Senate has asked the president to address the nation. He's seemingly not doing that. Vice President Oshibajo tweeted last night, in fact, when many Nigerians were asleep. I woke up this morning to that tweet. Many Nigerians are also asking questions. Who gave the order to shoot peaceful protesters at the Lekki toll gate? Who gave the orders to remove the cameras? The Lagos State governor has spoken concerning that. His government has also approved 200 million naira compensation fund for victims of police brutality. The federal government has gone ahead to say, okay, your 5-for-5 demand, we agree to it. The presidential panel on police reforms would look into that. SWAT has been established. So where does the reset button start from, despite these efforts by government? And young people are saying these efforts are not good enough because we've seen things like this before. Judicial panels have been established in this country. Nothing has been done. SARS has been renamed over the years. So it's like bringing old wine into a new bottle, where we can't trust you anymore because there's a trust deficit with those leading us. I hope you can encapsulate everything I've said.
I'll try. Yes. So the point is that, okay, I look at it from two angles. So if you want to be part of the birth of a new country, of a new baby, for example, you want to own a baby, right? You want to own a baby. You probably want to be in the labor room when that child is being born. So it's born into your hands. You want to name them. You want to name that child. If you had a baby abroad, you know that the moment you have, in fact, some people, you name the baby while it's still inside you.
Yes, you name the baby before you give birth.
You don't wait for 7 days. You know, that's the new world. And that's the world in which these youths actually live in. In which case, if you want a new Nigeria, you want to be in the labor room when that Nigeria is being born. So you want to be at the policy table. You see, my quarrel with the approach was that, listen, I did not see how the youth were preparing to be in the labor room. I didn't see why they were preparing to engage on policy issues that will define Nigeria for the next period of time. You know, of course, a lot of things were coming out. There was 5 for 5, 7 for 7, 9 for 9, 14 for 14, 23 for 23. And then you could look at 14 for 14, 23 to 23. 14 for 14 was more of a socialist agenda. They were asking for reduced fuel price, reduced electricity, free this, free that. And then 23 for 23 was very capitalist in nature. They were talking of privatize everything, deregulate everything, just give us opportunity to make money. So it was difficult to reconcile. At that point in time, of course, everybody in that group was afraid of stepping up to say, I am a leader, because of course someone is going to question you and say, when did we appoint you a leader?
Mr. Fasua, hold on a bit. You said it was difficult to reconcile. Some of those demands by the protesters, the youthful protesters, have been demands that even people like you have put forward over the years, have been demands that the country, the state needs to work modern. It is working right now. The cost for the regulation, the cost for resource control, the cost for even state policing, the cost that Nigeria must work down, it is working right now. So these are things that a lot of people have been saying. You were a presidential candidate. Some of those ills you saw that you said, let me come out and, you know, willingly make my service available to the Nigerian state. So why are you saying that it's, you know, that is not cogent, or it's not something that can be done?
Well, no. What I meant was, okay, so there was 5 for 5. The government said, look, we're tackling 5 for 5. We've disbanded SARS and we've created SWAT. They said we don't want SWAT. I think they've actually even forgotten the idea of SWAT, but we've disbanded SWAT. If you look at it, I saw an analysis from Lagos State government. They had already worked on 4 out of the 5. And then, of course, 7 came, and then 9 came, and 14 came. And, you know, when it got to that 14 and 23, I think we've already had a problem. If we go back to the 9, you know, for 9, which includes things like, you know, you have to pay the police a better salary, you have to reduce the cost of governance. Some of them were going to be tough anyway. They wanted a unicameral system. You know, we needed to scrap the Senate. We needed to make, you know, the work of the legislation to be a part-time work. Those are very heavy issues. You know what? I believe they could have sat on the National Assembly and even the State Assembly and actually get some constitutional reforms done almost immediately, because at that point in time, they had the attention of government all over this country. So of course, like I said, every strategy has its own downsides. That was the downside of the leaderless regime, in which case, nobody can step out and say, I'm the one representing everybody. And of course, there were different kind of quarrels amongst them as well. That's that. It's a great experience and a great experiment, and of course, something to build on. I must say that, look, going forward, there are gains. I can tell you that from going forward, the police in Nigeria, in whatever form they come, is going to be extremely very, very careful. Number two, anybody that leads this country politically is going to be extremely very, very careful about the insurrection of the youths. Okay, those are some of the things I think that they've been able to change as a result of stepping out and insisting on change and insisting on a better governance. I would, however, want them to also look inward. I'd want the youth to develop a kind of code of ethics for themselves, because, hey, I tell you what, I kid you not, almost everybody is responsible for where Nigeria is today, including even the youth. Some of them who are delusional. Some believe that life is all about enjoyment. I tell you what, if you go to Europe and America, many of the youths there have nothing. The life they live is a 9-to-5 life. You just manage to eke out a living for yourself. You live from paycheck to paycheck. You get taxed, a very high tax. There's nothing like I hammered, like they do here in Nigeria. Say, oh, I hammered, I did a business, I made 500 million in one day. No, where are you going to get that kind of opportunity abroad? Very, very few instances.
Mr. Fasua, let me halt you here and look at the metaphor of #EndSARS and Paystack. That was a good news that came out within this protest. Two Nigerian co-founders of Paystack, having been acquired by Stripe, an American company, for $200 million in about 5 years of their existence. For you to say that Nigerian youths are delusional, isn't it an insult and an abuse?
Don't quote me wrong. Do not quote me wrong. I didn't say Nigerian youths are delusional. That's a very...
Okay, so what did you mean by that? Because
life is not about enjoyment. That abroad in Europe, in Americas, a lot of the youths, they are struggling. In fact, you wouldn't want to live there. You probably want to come back here and see what you can make of yourself. That they don't do, you can't do a small business and maybe, like they say, the hammer. There's nothing like hammer abroad, except you are someone like Zuckerberg, who have created something from the scratch that gets the attention of the whole world before you can make that kind of money. And of course, there's a high tax regime and all of that going on there. But I'm saying that all of us have contributed to where this country is today. It's not only the adults, it's not only the government, okay? It's also both the public sector and the private sector. I would want to see a code of ethics about how do we run this country going forward, because running the country is not only about the government policies, it's also about how the private sector operates. And you have mentioned Paystack. You see what those guys created, even though their work, would depend on the backbone of what maybe some of the things that maybe like the satellites you connect to and all of that. I think about some of those infrastructure that we have to depend on that we don't own. Okay, but of course they've been able to create a vision of what Paystack is a payment system. It enables you to be able to pay money. It's like PayPal, which started in the US a long time ago, and they were bought for 200 million. It is a challenge to the youth. You see, but let me put it this way. It's a challenge to the youth to let you know that, okay, as young as you are, you can actually get something done. Number one. Number two, that no matter what we are looking at, don't look at the 200 million. Start small. Start now. Okay? Because these guys in Paystack had spent years before they were able to build the franchise to that level and build enough goodwill, and so that before the other Stripe saw the prospects of the business and decided to put money on it. Number three, that $200 million is not even the bottom line. That we should be looking at things that are bigger than that. I always say on your show, 5 biggest companies in the world, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, and so on. If you look at each of those companies, their valuation, Apple is $2 trillion. And that is 5 times of Nigeria's GDP, meaning that if all of our work in a given year, if we did everything we needed to do, produce goods and services, and we didn't spend 1 naira on ourselves, Nigeria cannot buy more than 20%, maybe 10% or 20% of Apple. All right. we can't buy more than 20% of apples. All of those things have to be put together. So it's a great metaphor. NSAS is the youth thing that look, whereas he talks about SARS and kind of defines the problem as a police problem, but they also use it as an entry point to look at a whole lot of other things. But the problem on ground right now is the problem of looting and arson going on on the back of protest, and something needs to be done about that.
Okay, Mr. Fasua, in just 30 seconds, what has been happening in the past few days in Nigeria has raised the risk perception of the economy, especially to investors. The stock market lost about 113 billion naira. Investors are still monitoring what's happening in the country. Very quickly, what are your perspectives?
Yes, I mean, well, they should just be patient with us. I think Nigeria will bounce back. Hopefully, the government will step up and do what they need to do. Hopefully, the youth will also step up, and everybody will speak up, and so that the country can press reset very quickly. So certainly when something like this goes on, the first place to react is the stock market, is investors. People get a lot wary, and that this country, it's been said a long time that the country will go through all sort of upheavals and so on. I would wish that we were wise enough not to play into some of those things that have been predicted. I believe we can govern ourselves. We can run this country. The youth can run this country in a digital manner. They need to reposition for that. They don't need any old politician to whatever, just a bit of guidance here and there. But they should know that they are the future of the country. And in fact, the future is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your perspectives this morning. I've been speaking with Tope Fasua, the Chief Executive Officer at Global Analytics. All right, that's a wrap on the show today. Let's continue to keep safe, and let's, I don't even have words right now because the event of the last few days has been so horrific. That's the much we can take. Thank you all for being a part of the program. I am Nancy Nnaji.